The Accidental Prime Minister. Chapter 2. Shout, shout, let it all out. I do beg your pardon, the Prime Minister snorted, his face now even redder than the reddest beetroot that there ever was. You again? Do you have something to say, you snivelling little wretch? Joe felt as though the whole world was looking at him, but for once he didn't care. I said, do you have anything to say? Percival T. Duckholm leaned in closer to Joe. He could feel the Prime Minister's hot, sticky breath on his cheek. It stank of old kippers and misery. Yes? Yes, I do, said Joe, trying to speak and hold his breath at the same time. I hadn't finished talking to you. I think you should shut up for once and try listening for a change, you big dafty. Dafty? Percival yelped. Yes, all you do is sit around in that big building, you know, the one on the HP sauce bottle, all day, yawning and shouting and telling us all off. The Prime Minister was dumbstruck, but Joe wasn't finished yet. In fact, he'd only just started. All I wanted you to do was listen to me so I could tell you all about the park. 5 minutes, that's all, but even that was too much to ask. All you did was shout at me, and it's not right. Politicians shouldn't tell us what to do. We should tell them what to do. They work for us, don't they? We pay their wages. How can they close parks without checking with us first? The whole thing is just bonkers. And another thing, why do we need alarm clocks? Percival T. Duckholm looked even more perplexed now. Alarm clocks? Yes, alarm clocks. Joe was really getting into his stride now. They just put people in a bad mood when they get up. Why does everything have to happen so early? If we all had a lie-in, we'd all be nicer to each other and would need fewer policemen. Then we could turn the empty jails into theme parks. But instead of being sensible and making sensible decisions, politicians just sit on sofas all day, falling asleep and occasionally yawning. Here. Cats should have Wi-Fi hubs on them. That way, everyone could get a signal all the time. Bubblegum blowing should be an Olympic event. Joe paused for breath. It was as though everything that had ever popped into his head was coming out of his mouth, and he couldn't do anything about it. But the best thing was, it felt amazing. Why don't they put swimming pools on trains? It'd make journeys a lot more fun. And why do all buses look the same? Joe suddenly asked no one in particular. I'll tell you why. To make us confused and late for stuff. They should have different shaped ones for different journeys. If there was a banana bus that took you to the shops, you'd get on it, wouldn't you? Joe said, pointing to an old gent in the crowd who nodded enthusiastically. Of course you would. What sensible person wouldn't get on a bus shaped like a piece of fruit? Don't the government want people to go on buses more? Well, they should make them more interesting. And here's another thing. Nobody under the age of 50 should ever have to wear a bow tie. All the toilets should have electric seats to warm your bum up in the winter. There should be 1 day a month at school where the children get to be in charge of the teachers. Cafes should have beds instead of seats. Why do we only get to eat breakfast in bed? Shouldn't we eat every meal like that? Oh, isn't it time we ban shows like Britain's Got the X Factor Voice on Ice? Surely we have enough singers in this country now, and I would definitely make it illegal to say the word lol. I mean, people actually say lol rather than just laughing. If I ever got to be in charge, things would be very different. I wouldn't waffle on about how bad the other lot have been. I'd sort stuff out. I mean, how tough can it be? Grown-ups have had their turn at running the country. Why not let us kids have a go? At least that way we'd get to keep our blooming parks. And just like that, Joe had finished, as though he'd suddenly run out of batteries. He looked around to see that everyone was staring at him, open-mouthed. What seemed brilliant only a few seconds ago felt so silly now. What was he thinking? His cheeks began to flush pink with embarrassment. Suddenly, there was a slapping sound. And then another. It sounded like... No, not sounded like. It was... clapping. He was being applauded. You tell him, son, said one man. We need a few more like you in charge. The applause grew louder and louder. Joe looked at AJ. AJ looked at Joe and mouthed the word wow at him. He was stunned, but not as stunned as Joe. Percival T. Duckholm snorted like a pig and stormed back into his car, yelling at the driver, "Take me back now! Upstaged by a little child! I'll never hear the end of this!" Charlie James, the TV reporter, said something to his cameraman and then turned to Joe. "That was, totally just, What the heck was that supposed to mean?" The TV crew whispered a few more words to each other before making a hasty exit. Suddenly, the realisation of what Joe had done hit him like a wave of icy water. Do you think Mr. Brooks will be mad?" Joe asked AJ nervously. "What, that you just called the Prime Minister a dafty on TV? I think we're about to find out," AJ replied. Mr. Brooks was running after the car, banging on the window, begging Percival not to leave, and that's when Joe's eyes met Violetta Crump's. She was staring at him from the limo. She didn't blink. She didn't shout. She just stared at him. Joe felt his spine tingle, like it was made of ice-cold jelly. He grabbed his bag and headed for school, trying to look inconspicuous. The crowd parted as he walked on through the school doors down towards his classroom. Maybe it will all blow over, thought Joe, as he waited for AJ to catch him up. And that's when he sensed it, like a deep rumble of a faraway train. A ball of anger so huge that it could be felt before it was heard. Then, like a furious belch, it hurtled out of Mr. Brooks's mouth at 100 miles an hour. "Perkins, my office now!" "Wow, that was quick," said AJ, tapping his watch. Joe and AJ sat in Mr. Brooks's office. He was so nervous they could barely look at each other, let alone speak. Mr. Brooks bounded in, slamming the door behind him. "I might have known it'd be you two," he sneered. "It's always you two." Before Mr. Brooks could utter a word of the speech he'd clearly been planning in his head, the phone started ringing. Mr. Brooks picked it up and slammed it down without answering. Joe gulped. "Mr. Brooks," AJ started, "I just wanted to say sorry I shouldn't have..." He stopped mid-sentence and scratched his head. "Hang on, I haven't done anything. Why am I here?" "Oh, you'll be involved somewhere. You always are," Mr. Brooks hissed. The phone rang again. Mr. Brooks picked it up and hung up once more without even looking away from Joe and AJ. He was just about to start yelling again when his mobile started ringing. "Oh, for goodness sake," he said, switching it off. "Have you two any idea how important today was? Our school could have been famous. Do you know what that could mean?" New school books?" asked Joe. "Eh?" Mr. Brooks replied with a note of surprise. "Think big, lad. Wouldn't it be great if the school had a new PE block or perhaps a new swimming pool? I was going to ask the PM for his help." "I just wanted him to listen about the park," Joe began. "Imagine it, Perkins. Imagine a world where the school had a private swimming pool, only open to a very select bunch of people. Know what I mean?" he said, tapping his nose. "You mean the children?" asked AJ. "Well, okay, some of the children. The clean ones, perhaps. Maybe the kind of children who mention that the school needs a swimming pool on TV. Not the kind who call the blooming Prime Minister a dafty and go on about parks." "But he is a dafty," Joe protested. "I know that. They all are, but that's not the point." "Ah, I understand," Joe said, not really understanding. "Nothing too fancy, just one with one of those water slides and maybe a waterfall." Mr. Brooks was still in a daydream, fantasising about swimming pools. "Oh, and I like those steam rooms and a hot tub, but you two totally blew it." "Once again, Mr. Brooks, totally innocent here," said AJ, holding up his hands. Then AJ's phone started to ring. "Uh-oh. It's for emergencies only. I never have it on during class." "Hand over the phone, boy." AJ grabbed his phone and went to give it to Mr. Brooks. "Oh my good crikey," he yelled, staring at the screen. "You're not going to like this, Mr. Brooks." Just then, Miss Jones, the school secretary, burst in. Why aren't you answering your phone? She cried. The whole place has gone berserk trying to get hold of you. I've got people from all over the world on the phone through here. All over the world? Mr. Brooks's eyes lit up. Wanting to talk to me? No. They want Joe. Me? Why? Joe asked, confused. You've gone viral, AJ said, handing over his phone to Joe and Mr. Brooks. Look! Chapter 3. Fame. Viral? Am I ill? Joe said with a panic in his voice. Is it serious? No, viral as in, just watch. AJ clicked the button on his phone and it began to play. It took Joe a second or two to realise what he was looking at, but then he made out a face. It was... Yes, there was no mistaking it. It was his face. What? It's me! My nan in Mumbai just sent it to me, AJ said excitedly. Joe was dumbstruck. His speech was being replayed before his eyes. He'd only said it half an hour ago, and already he was being watched around the world. He buried his face in his hands. He'd made a fool of himself, and now the whole world was watching. Joe took a peek through his fingers, expecting AJ to be as horrified and as embarrassed as him, but he was smiling. I mean, proper big smiles. His mate was enjoying it. This could be big for us, Joe. We could be millionaires, said AJ. Look how many people have watched it. Mr. Brooks grabbed the phone. 150,000 hits, he screamed. Don't be ridiculous, Mr. Brooks, snapped AJ. Oh, phew, Joe sighed. That's 1.5 million hits, AJ grinned. It took Joe a moment to register what AJ had just said. What? 1.5 million? AJ finished off his sentence for him, grinning like a cat that not only had found the cream, but had stumbled across his own dairy. I mean, I know at least 5 of them have been my nan. Look, you can see my nose in the background, but 1.5 million, man! Joe, are you listening to me? But Joe wasn't listening. He was feeling very peculiar. He sat down on the floor as if suddenly weighed down. It had taken all his nerve to say something to the Prime Minister in the first place, and now it had gone global. He didn't want any of this. He just wanted to help stop the park from being closed and for his mum to keep her job. You're not going to throw up, are you? Mr. Brooks said, wincing. I don't want anyone throwing up in here. No, Joe said. It was all he could manage. I know that noise. It's a throwy up kind of a noise, Mr. Brooks said. Well, perhaps if you stop mentioning that word, AJ said crossly, he might not, throw up, Mr. Brooks said. Amazing. Ugh, AJ sighed. AJ sat next to Joe and put his arm around him. Joe, man, you done nothing wrong. What you did, well, it was cool. I don't want to be cool. Cool is for other people. I want to be me. Oh, Joe yelled. Okay, forget cool, forget it. But people are talking about you. You know what this means? No, what? I'm not sure, but I think it must mean free sweets somehow. You might even get to be on TV again or travel the world or something. But the most important thing is this could help save the park. That's what you want, isn't it? They both looked at each other and slowly but surely Joe began to grin. Sure, it was, I'm quite queasy and may barf at any moment sort of a grin, but it was a grin all the same. Do you really think we could save the park? Joe asked. Deep in the heart of number 10 Downing Street, a pair of grand old oak doors burst open, letting rip a crack that could send a shockwave through the building. Violetta stomped down the corridor with a face like thunder, a phone clenched in her hand and blood vessels popping in her forehead like rivers of hot, red lava. I see Violetta's back, Jenkins muttered, peering over his half-moon glasses. Jenkins was a gentleman with an air of sophistication about him. He looked and sounded as though he was born in the wrong time, a relic from a forgotten England, a distant echo from a different age. He was old and very, very posh, is what I'm basically trying to say. Jenkins was the Prime Minister's personal private secretary. His job was to make sure the Prime Minister could do his Despite his gentlemanly appearance, he was a fearsome man with a brain so clever it was a wonder if he could fit it all in his head. He had the world-weary air of a man who had worked for every Prime Minister for the last 40 years, and he was scared of no one. Least of all, puffed-up Deputy Prime Ministers in the mood for an argument. "Where is he?" Violet yelled, slamming her phone down on the desk so hard that one poor office worker peed his pants and had to be taken to a dark room to be wrung out like a flannel. Jenkins took one last slurp of tea and folded his paper away neatly. "Who?" he asked calmly. This seemed to enrage Violetta even more. "Lord Duck of Thickham! Who else, you blithering idiot?" Violetta raged at Jenkins. "Oh, the PM is just through there," Jenkins said, nodding at a closed door. Violetta burst through into the Prime Minister's office to find the Prime Minister under his desk on the phone. He hung up as soon as he saw Violetta's grisly expression. "Now, Violetta, I can assure you that I had no idea whose luxury yacht I was sailing on the other day. I mean, if I'd have known that it belonged to one of the FBI's most wanted criminals, I certainly wouldn't have gone on board." "Oh, shut it. Now, I haven't told the papers about that one yet. You're safe for a day or so." "So it was you who told them about all the other stuff," Percival shouted, pointing his sausage finger at her face. "Oh, you've only just figured that one out, have you, lard brain? Why didn't you just do as I said? All you had to do was get out of the car, smile, refuse to answer questions, and tell them in a few days that you were going to resign because you were ill or wanted to spend more time with your goldfish, anything. But no, you couldn't even do that properly, could you? We had an agreement. You hand the job over to me so you don't go to jail." "Sorry, Violetta. Please don't hurt me. I panicked. They kept asking me questions. I have my pride. Coming from a man sat under a table hiding, that doesn't mean a whole lot." "Oh, it gets much worse than that, Violetta," Jenkins interrupted, entering the room. "That boy, the one who called the PM a useless warthog, is all over the news. In fact, he's everywhere. He seems to have achieved more popularity in 2 hours than you achieved in 20 years. Jenkins began to read from a phone. "They should make that boy PM and get rid of Percival and Violetta," it says here. "Joe for PM, he the man, whatever that means." Violetta grabbed the mobile off Jenkins. "What?" She was so furious, it's no exaggeration to say her eyes went red with rage. "It can't be! Who does he think he is? I will not let one tiny little runt upstage me. All my life I've been waiting. It's always second best. Well, not anymore!" Violet hurled the phone at the wall where it smashed into 100 pieces. "What do you think of that, Jenkins?" "Impressive. Of course, it would have been more so if it wasn't your phone." "What?" "I was handing you your phone, your own phone, the one you left on my desk." Percival laughed. "Oh, shut up, duck features," Violetta hissed. "Nothing is going to stop me from becoming the next Prime Minister. Not you, not him, nothing."